Most people think of an aura as a glow, something soft, mystical, and luminous. But in Jungian terms, your true aura is something much deeper. It's the psychological atmosphere shaped by your experiences, emotions, and unconscious patterns. And for a rare few, that atmosphere is thick with intensity, mystery, and unprocessed truth. Carl Jung believed that our true transformation comes not through perfection, but through integration, especially of the shadow, the exiled, repressed parts of the psyche. Those with rare auras often carry more shadow content than others. Why? Because they're built not just from their own pain, but from the pain of generations. Can you feel the emotional weight of things you didn't directly experience? Comment 1 if you sense ancestral or generational pain in your emotional patterns. Comment 2 if you've only recently begun to uncover that possibility. This video will guide you through 6 unmistakable signs that you may carry one of these rare energetic imprints. But be warned, these signs won't flatter your ego. They'll ask you to face yourself, to listen not to the voice you perform for the world, but the one that whispers when you're alone. Sign 1. You keep repeating self-destructive patterns, even when you know they hurt you. Why do you keep going back to people who drain you? Why do you sabotage new beginnings the moment they start to feel good? Why do you watch yourself make the same mistake? Again, like a loop you can't escape. It's not because you're weak, and it's not because you haven't learned your lesson. It's because some part of you, the part you rarely hear, doesn't want the lesson. It wants safety, familiarity, a pattern, even if it's painful. Carl Jung would call this the shadow's compulsive repetition. The shadow isn't just where we hide our shame or rage. It's where we store our coping mechanisms, the ones we adopted to survive early emotional conditions that made us feel unsafe, unlovable, or unseen. So when you repeat self-destructive patterns, you're not sabotaging yourself at random. You're following an emotional blueprint, one that says, love feels dangerous, peace feels suspicious, pain is safer, I know how to survive that. Jung taught that until we bring this blueprint into the light, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will silently direct our lives. We'll call it fate. Or worse, we'll call it just who I am. But it's not who you are. It's who you became to survive. Think of it like a fire alarm with broken wiring. It goes off, not because there's fire, but because the system is stuck in the past. Hypervigilant, frozen in memory. You repeat the same relationships, the same arguments, the same emotional crashes, not because you enjoy the pain, but because your psyche is still scanning for danger based on outdated emotional data. Breaking this pattern isn't about more discipline. It's about deeper awareness, radical honesty, looking at the emotional origin story beneath the cycle. Because once you see the code, really see it, you begin to rewrite it. And that's the first mark of a rare aura. You don't just crash, you question why. You feel the pain and ask, what part of me is still trying to protect me by repeating this? That question alone is evolution. Sign 2. You hear a voice that sounds like you, but keeps tearing you down. There's a voice in your head. It sounds like you. It uses your tone, your logic, even your vocabulary. But its message is always the same. You're not enough. You're going to fail. No one really sees you. You should just stay small. You don't want to believe it, but you do. Because it's been with you so long, it feels like truth. But here's the paradox. That voice, the one you hate, the one that shames and criticizes you, isn't your enemy. In Jungian psychology, it's a fragment of your shadow self, shaped in your most vulnerable years. And its true role? Protection. Jung understood the psyche as a dynamic system of opposites. The persona, your outward mask, shows the world your strength, but the shadow holds your fear, inadequacy, longing, and grief. The inner critic is a messenger from that shadow, repeating inherited scripts you absorbed early on, from parents, teachers, culture, or trauma. It says, don't get your hopes up. It means, I can't bear to see you disappointed again. It says, you're too much. It means, last time you were fully yourself, you were hurt. This isn't self-hate. It's misdirected self-protection. The voice tries to shrink you, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it believes smallness is safety. It learned that confidence invites criticism, that vulnerability attracts pain, that visibility leads to rejection. And so it repeats those lessons like a warning bell. Stay hidden, stay low, stay guarded. But here's the catch. When you believe that voice, you self-limit. You mute your gifts. You retreat from love, from growth, from becoming. Imagine a guard dog trained to bark at every stranger. It doesn't mean to destroy your peace. It just doesn't know the war is over. This voice is your guard dog. It needs re-education, not rejection. When you start dialoguing with it, naming it as shadow, not truth, you begin to reclaim your inner space. And that's another sign of a rare aura. You don't mistake your inner voice for your identity. You learn to listen without obeying. That's emotional alchemy. Sign 3. You ruin things. Just when they start going well. You've waited so long for things to go right. The relationship, the opportunity, the breakthrough. And then, just when it arrives, something inside you panics. You pick a fight. You procrastinate. You disappear. You ruin it. And you don't know why. It's not because you're self-destructive. It's because your nervous system has made a dangerous association. Peace equals danger. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And sometimes, anything looks like chaos. Not because it's enjoyable, but because it's familiar. If your early emotional landscape was marked by instability, fear, or rejection, your body learned to expect chaos. It became your psychological baseline. Your shadow adapted. Now, when calm enters your life, love without games, success without hustle, joy without guilt, something inside screams, "This isn't safe." That scream? It's your shadow. It remembers when hope ended in betrayal, when softness was punished, when trust was a setup for disappointment. So your system does what it believes is protective. It preemptively sabotages. You unconsciously recreate the emotional weather you're used to, just to feel at home, just to avoid the unbearable shock of things falling apart after you've let your guard down. Jung called this a neurotic conflict, a split between what the conscious self desires and what the unconscious self expects. You want love, but expect abandonment. You want success, but associate it with pressure or loss. So you pull away, create distance, destroy what you deeply wanted. It's not madness, it's defense. Imagine a person who's lived their whole life at sea during a storm. One day, they arrive at a quiet, sunny harbor, and they feel unease. Not because it's bad, but because it's unknown. That's what happens inside you. Calm triggers panic. Peace feels foreign. Chaos feels like home. But here's the sign of a rare aura. You catch yourself mid-pattern. You don't just sabotage, you see it. And in seeing it, you begin the slow rewiring of what safety actually means. Not chaos, not silence, but wholeness. Sign 4. You feel guilty. When you start choosing yourself. Why does saying no feel like betrayal? Why does setting a boundary come with a wave of nausea, shame, or panic? Why do you feel like you're hurting others when you finally begin to honor your own needs? This isn't just emotional discomfort. It's inherited guilt, a signal from your psyche that you are stepping outside the emotional rules you were raised with. Carl Jung called this phenomenon emotional inheritance, deeply tied to the collective unconscious, a psychic layer where ancestral experiences, traumas, and unspoken family contracts are stored and passed down. We carry not just our personal wounds, but the emotional codes of those who came before us. So when you start to choose yourself, when you break patterns of self-sacrifice, silence, or caretaking, your system interprets it as danger. Not because it's wrong, but because it's new. And in families or cultures where survival depended on submission, silence, or pleasing others, individuation The process of becoming your true self can feel like betrayal. That feeling? It's guilt. But it's not rational guilt. It's ancestral coding. A shadow of someone else's suffering whispering, "Who do you think you are? You're not allowed to want more. Don't abandon what we gave you." But what they gave you wasn't always love. Sometimes it was fear disguised as loyalty. Silence passed off as strength. Self-erasure mistaken for virtue. You were taught, directly or indirectly, that love means sacrifice. That being good means being available. That your worth is measured by how much of yourself you can give away. And now, as you reclaim yourself, that emotional system screams. Jung believed that true healing is not just personal, it's ancestral liberation. When you break an emotional pattern, you don't just heal yourself. You free generations who never got the chance. Imagine carrying an invisible chain for decades. You begin to unclip it, and your body shudders. Not because you're wrong, but because you're freeing a lineage from unconscious agreements. Here's the sign of a rare aura. You feel the guilt, and choose yourself anyway. You understand that discomfort isn't a sign you're doing harm. It's a sign you're finally doing something different. That's not selfishness. That's sacred rebellion. Sign 5. You think too much, feel too much, and get overwhelmed by what others shrug off. You walk into a room and instantly feel it. The tension no one's naming. The sadness behind someone's smile. The subtle shifts in energy, tone, posture. You notice everything. You feel everything, and it wears you down. While others seem able to glide through life with surface-level awareness, you're submerged. Life isn't just happening around you, it's happening through you. Carl Jung believed that some individuals possess an innate openness to the collective unconscious, making them more attuned to emotional and symbolic realities that most people block out. These individuals often align with what Jung called the introverted intuitive type. People who live at the intersection of internal sensation and collective meaning. For those with rare auras, this openness becomes a kind of psychic hypersensitivity. You don't just experience your own emotions, you absorb the unspoken emotions of others. You ruminate, spiral, reflect endlessly. Not because you're broken, but because your perceptual filters are wide open. And it's exhausting. You process the world like an exposed nerve. A smile that isn't real disturbs you more than a raised voice. A slight in someone's tone replays in your head for days. A movie scene breaks your heart for reasons you can't explain. People call it overthinking or being too sensitive. But that's because they're operating on default settings. You've got 1,000 tabs open in your psyche, emotional tabs, ancestral tabs, symbolic tabs. Jung understood that such sensitivity often signals a deeper calling, but also a deeper burden. You were not built for numbness. You were built to feel deeply, to perceive patterns others miss. But without boundaries, that gift becomes a weight. Does your deep sensitivity feel like a gift or a burden? Comment 1 if you've learned to honor it. Comment 2 if you're still figuring out how to manage the overwhelm. It's like having no skin between you and the world. This is why you burn out, why social settings drain you, why you need solitude not as a luxury, but as medicine. And here's the mark of your rare aura. You sense the invisible. But more importantly, you're learning to regulate it, to differentiate between what's yours and what you're carrying. That's not dysfunction. That's sensitivity without structure, and you're learning to give it form. You're not weak. You're tuned in. Sign 6. You don't need more discipline, you need permission. You've told yourself you just need to try harder. More control, more routines, more discipline. You scold yourself for being too emotional, too reactive, too messy. But what if the problem isn't your lack of control? What if it's your lack of permission? Carl Jung warned that what we repress doesn't disappear. It becomes shadow. And the more powerful the repression, the more forceful the shadows return. Not to destroy us, but to demand integration. Most of your spirals, the late-night scrolling, the numbing, the anger, the tears you swallow, aren't signs of laziness or weakness. They're signals of emotional hunger. Not addiction to chaos, but craving for expression. for softness, for truth. You weren't taught to say, "I'm overwhelmed." You were taught to perform, to suppress, to be fine. You internalized the idea that needing is shameful, that crying is weak, that feeling is too much. So you armored up, you pushed through, but now the armor is cracking, and the emotions you locked away are flooding back. This isn't regression. It's your psyche asking to be whole. Your shadow, the abandoned child, the silenced anger, the uncried grief, doesn't need to be managed. It needs to be met. It doesn't need another routine. It needs relief. Jungian individuation isn't about becoming better. It's about becoming truthful. And here's your truth. You don't need more discipline. You need permission to rest without earning it, to need without apologizing, to feel without explaining, to exist without performing. This kind of permission is radical, especially for those with rare auras, people who have spent their lives compensating for being too much by becoming hyperfunctional, hyper-aware, hyper-responsible. But healing doesn't come through more effort. It comes through softness, through giving yourself what no one ever gave you. That's the final mark of a rare aura. You stop trying to fix yourself and start listening to yourself. And in that listening, the healing begins, not with a bang, but with a whisper. You are allowed to be whole. You've just seen the signs. Maybe one hit you. Maybe all 6 did. You recognize the patterns, the voice, the guilt, the spiral, the sensitivity, the quiet ache for permission. And here's the revelation. None of these are signs of failure. They are signs of awakening. Carl Jung taught that the path to wholeness runs directly through the shadow, not around it. The shadow is not a flaw to be fixed, but a forgotten intelligence. A wounded part of your psyche still trying to protect you the only way it knows how, through fear, sabotage, collapse, or withdrawal. But now, you see it. You name it. You witness the code beneath the chaos. This is the heart of individuation, the journey not toward perfection, but toward integration. The moment when you stop dividing yourself into good and bad parts and begin to hold all of it with compassion, you realize your compulsions were not flaws. They were strategies. Your shutdowns were not weakness. They were boundaries. Your tears were not proof you're broken. They were messages from the soul. You were never too much. You were overloaded with what others repressed. And now, as you stand in this awareness, something ancient begins to shift. Not all at once, but cell by cell. Not to make you better, but to make you whole. Your rare aura isn't a burden. It's a calling. So, how many signs did you recognize? 1, 3, all 6? Whatever the number, know this. You're not broken. You're encoded. And every signal you've seen in yourself, every pattern, every spiral, every tear you couldn't explain, has been a message from your inner world. A message saying, there is more to you than what you've been allowed to express. Carl Jung didn't believe in fixing people. He believed in helping them become whole. And wholeness doesn't come from control, perfection, or performance. It comes from integration, the sacred work of reclaiming the parts of you were taught to hide. Your shadow is not the darkness in you. It's the part of you waiting to be seen without judgment. And your rare aura? It's not an aesthetic or a mystical trend. It's the lived imprint of deep emotional awareness, born from survival, shaped by inherited pain, and awakening now into purpose. That's why your life has felt heavy. Why normal never fit. Why silence felt suffocating. You were never meant to fit. You were meant to transform. But transformation isn't loud. It's not performative. It's quiet, unseen. It happens in the moments you choose truth over habit, awareness over reaction, self-compassion over self-criticism. So here's your invitation. Stop fighting your sensitivity. Start honoring it. Stop calling yourself weak. Start seeing yourself as wise. Stop looking for control. Start offering yourself permission. You don't need to become someone else. You need to return to the one you were before the world told you to be small. And if you want to go deeper, read Jung. Read about the shadow, The anima, the collective unconscious, the sacred work of individuation. His writings are not just psychology. They are maps back to yourself. Because the rarest aura is the one that's fully integrated. Not just light, not just dark, but whole. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So, who would you be if you stopped fighting yourself? You already know. Now it's time to become it. How many of these signs felt like looking into a mirror? Comment 1 if this helped you see your depth with new eyes. Comment 2 if it made you realize you're not alone in how you feel.